Um, so yeah, hello and welcome to our presentation today on mastering SME AI adoption and the 5 steps to success. We've helped a lot of businesses adopt AI in the past few years. And although I've been working in machine learning for a long time, when we first started with these new tools, we worked on lots of different businesses and lots of different sorts of projects. And what we found was that after a while, patterns began to emerge between them in terms of the phases that we're going through and the lessons that they were learning. So the 5 steps to success, which we're going to talk about today, are really just the patterns that we've seen emerge from working in AI for the past few years. So we hope to share these insights today with you so that you can take your business to the next level. So let's just briefly cover what we'll be talking about today. So we're going to talk about the cycle of AI adoption, the 5 steps, obviously. We'll have a few interactive polls, talk about the AI landscape and the impact of AI on business to give you some context. We'll run through some use cases and case studies so you can actually see some real world applications, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the solutions and services that we offer. And at the end, we'll have a little bit of Q&A. So a little bit about us. So Appy Automations is an AI automation agency. So that means we help businesses adopt AI to enable them to grow, scale, and streamline. So we provide training, consulting, and implementation services. So we start businesses on their journey with workshops and online courses, and we call this the AI accelerator experience. And then we lead them towards maturity and long-term success. So a little bit of background about us. So I'm Ross Pepperell. So I founded Appy Automations in 2023 after I sold my previous business. And the reason I wanted to do that was I wanted to share the benefits of AI across industry. So I spent a lot of my career in the financial services sector doing cutting edge stuff with machine learning and delivering tech solutions. And with this new toolkit, it was obvious that you could kind of go across industries and share the love, as it were. So I'm passionate about helping businesses do that and get the benefits out of doing it. With me today, hopefully, we've got Mike Chatterton, who's my business partner. I'm not sure if Claire, you could give him access to speak. I'm sure he'll be kicking around somewhere.
Mike is on the
Hello.
call.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So hi everyone. My name is Mike Chatterton, and as Ross says, I also work in AI adoption. I've done 20 odd years as a technology consultant, AI projects going back about 20 years, but predominantly focusing on this new breed of technology that Ross is going to talk to you about today.
Great. Okay, so let's just quickly cover the cycle, as it were. There's quite a bit of information on this chart, but what you're seeing is the cycle of adoption and the 5 steps to success. The grey bit is the actual cycle. It's what the crowd is doing. So it's got a long tail at the beginning because you have all of the early adopters and there's not that many of them. And then eventually they all start to twig on that this is actually something worth doing, and everyone starts using it until everything gets saturated. What you'll find is the crowd is generally a bit slow. So where we are now is that about 15% of businesses are using AI well, according to the recent studies there or thereabouts. So the majority are just really sort of starting their journey or are sort of jumping ahead without much foundations. So the shaded blue area is what happens if you take our path of AI adoption. So we call this hitting the AI accelerator, and that is actually your competitive advantage when you think about it. So we see these sort of 5 steps to success as being the steps the business has to take. So this chart shows how the process works. So to start off, we've got understanding. So without understanding why it's important, you can't really go anywhere. Then you need to understand relevance. Why is it important to your business specifically? Once you've got that part and you've got some ideas that you can test out, then you kind of need a framework as to how to go about implementing them, all the organizational pieces that go with it. Then when you're ready to actually build things out, then obviously you need to project manage these AI projects to get them going. And if you want to ensure long-term success, then you obviously need a sort of process to embed that as part of the culture in your business. So we're going to be talking about each of these elements today. So Before we do that, we'd like to get some sense of where people are at with their AI journey. So we're actually using something called menti.com today. So this is an interactive poll. So if you've got access to your mobile phone or if you're on your desktop, if you actually go to menti.com and if you enter the code on the screen, you don't need to log in. It's completely anonymous. If you're able to do that, then you can actually answer some of these polls that we're going to do. So the code that you have to enter is on the screen, which is 12821397. And it should be right at the top of the bar on the screen as you go into menti.com. I'll just give you a few seconds to do that. Aha. So already we're starting to get some answers in. So we thought it would just be interesting to get a sense of where everyone is at the moment. Lots of people obviously are already using AI a little bit, but others on the call may not so much. So we thought that would just be interesting. Okay. So it looks like from the results then, as it's appearing on the screen, that lots of people understand what AI is about. As we can see that big hump of the distribution there, everyone's highly confident about that. It seems to be relatively flat about how it applies to the industry. Some people confident, some are not, and the same in the business and the same individually. But it looks like people are not quite as sure about what to do next about AI. Okay, so let's move on to the next poll. So we just want to get a sense of how people are actually using AI, what sort of tools. So um, let's know, whether you're using open source tools or paid tools like OpenAI, free stuff, or nothing at all. It's all absolutely fine. Whatever you're doing, it would just be interesting to know what you're up to. So this is pretty interesting. So obviously with free tools, I'm imagining that lots of people here are using them for business. One thing you kind of need to be a bit conscious about is how they use your data. So obviously with paid subscriptions, they're not allowed to use anything. So you just need to be conscious that you're not putting any sensitive information into any of the free tools. But they're a fantastic way of trying things out and getting to see what the capabilities are of different platforms. Okay, I think that's about the limit of where we are. And the final question, which we thought would be interesting, is how are you using it? There's a lot of use cases out there. Um, so you can use obviously things for like producing content, but there are many, many, many others. So it would just be interesting to see what you're all doing.
Oh, Ross, you might have to go back. I think it's gone to voting rather than.
Okay.
There you go.
Is this working now? Oh, here we go. Brilliant. Okay. It's starting to come in thick and fast now. Chat GPT rules my life. Brilliant. Okay, so that's kind of interesting. There's quite a few which are more content orientated around here. Email drafting, letter drafting, content, social media ideas. starting marketing pieces. So hopefully we'll give you some more ideas about what it can do pretty shortly. Okay, I think we're going to leave it there. What we've noticed in dealing with a lot of businesses is that they generally aren't aware of everything that's possible right now. So they might have seen some headlines, but they haven't thought a lot about the various technologies and how they relate to each other, and how they can be applied to their business. So next, we're going to talk about each of the steps, the 5 steps, and why they're important. So the first step on the journey is understanding. So we're going to have lots of different sorts of people today, and some of whom may not be as familiar with AI. So let's just start with a simple question. What is artificial intelligence, or AI? AI can refer to any situation where a machine carries out a task that would usually require human intelligence. So this means that you can ask AI a question and it has the ability to think independently and respond. Potentially, it can also take actions and have agency as well. So to give you a bit of context about the AI landscape now, we've got 2 basic types of AI. Now, some people might say this is not the purest approach, but just to keep it simple, the first is what we call old AI. So this is machine learning and single purpose models. So I used to work on developing these a lot of the time. So they're used to classify things like good, bad, true, false, or predict things. So, for example, a food manufacturer might want to use it for helping them to pick out bad apples, or a business might want to use or have a forecast about what their demand might be for a particular product. So single-use models are often highly technical and require data scientists to use. But the good news is that things have changed. So now we have new AI, or generative AI. So these are the large language models that you can talk to. They've got general knowledge about everything, and you can interact with them as you would a human. So this is the technology that's transformed AI. Oops, pardon me, that was fat finger there. This is the technology that's transformed AI in the past few years. And 2 things have happened. Firstly, they've obviously become much more intelligent. They've gone from something with limited use to something that's now really useful and has the intelligence of a postgraduate. Secondly, they've become really easy to use. So this has made AI much more accessible to everyone. And now the models are so good that unless you've got a specialist need, you don't actually need to build your own and go down the machine learning or AI engineering route. You just need to learn how to apply what's already out there. But before you can do that, you need to learn about this new toolkit. So Mike put this beautiful illustration together. So in the middle, what we've got are the AI abilities, and around the outside, we've got the complementary technologies. So in the middle, we've got things like language and understanding, generation, knowledge and reasoning, cross-domain knowledge, creativity and generalization, social and emotional understanding, task-specific skills, learning and adaptability, and scaling-driven behaviors. And those scaling-driven behaviors lead to some unexpected emergent abilities. And what we mean by scaling is the more and more and more information that you add into these things, then unexpected and new and useful things actually start to happen. Around the outside, we've got complementary technologies that make using AI even more useful. So it's not sitting on its own. Things like transcription, multimodal capability, so it can see, hear, speak, and do so interchangeably with things like text to speech, video to text, to audio recognition, and so on. We've got visual and spatial media technologies like robotics and simulation, data collection and processing, so you can take a big jumble of data and make sense out of it. Got knowledge, web search, and the ability to reason through complex tasks. And this ultimately leads us to autonomous and agentic behavior, meaning it can think and act independently and use tools. This is all pretty mind-blowing. If you think of where we were just a few years ago, it's pretty nuts. Right, time to take a deep breath about that now. So just think about how you could combine these different abilities and complementary technologies together. That is the power of this new toolkit. So this is what can actually be pretty inspiring for you if you actually think about how it can be applied to your business. So let's take a moment to think about what the potential benefits of using this new toolkit are. The value lies around three main areas. We've got improved customer experience, operational efficiency, and enhanced data-driven decision making. Ultimately, though, AI just allows you to grow. That can be through innovation, better processes and client experiences, or through efficiencies. So using AI in your business is obviously very helpful, and no doubt many of you already understand that. But the next stage where you see big changes is when you combine AI with automation. Automation by itself is pretty deterministic. It's like, if this happens, do that, and generally repeat. Now, when you add AI into the mix, it can actually reason and decide what course of action to take, allowing you to create much more sophistication and produce better results, which can then be scaled with automation. It does it again and again and again. But it's not just me saying how wonderful AI is and what the opportunities are. There's been lots of studies done now. A recent one, which we saw, which is interesting, came out from Accenture in October of last year, and they found some big upsides to using AI. So they're finding 2.4 times improvement in productivity, 2.5 times improvement in revenue growth, and businesses that were using AI were 3.3 times more successful at finding high value use cases versus their peers. So this gives you a flavour of the opportunities that are out there. But what about the risks? The main risk, I think, from AI is disruption to your business. Of course, the level of disruption is not the same across industries, but the message is clear. You can't afford to be complacent. And many of you are going to be old enough to remember the last big technology cycle when the internet was born. Many businesses ignored the new technology or couldn't see how it would be applicable. So things like e-commerce, they were skeptical whether that would work. So we saw big names like Blockbuster go under whilst others made a fortune. I think AI is going to be a bit like this, except on steroids, because obviously the capabilities are so much more sophisticated and the rate of change is going to be faster. So what we do with the AI Accelerator is help businesses demystify AI so they can think clearly about what it actually means for their business. So to do that, we run tailored workshops. This typically involves interviewing the key stakeholders and then using that information as part of a half-day workshop to get everyone up to speed. The benefit of that is it gets everyone on the same page and bought into the process, which is really important in our view, because often some employees can be a bit fearful about their jobs and the impact on their business. But what they get out of it are new skills, confidence, and the ability to start working with AI and AI-powered tools. For businesses that aren't ready to take the plunge, we actually also offer a 3-hour CPD certified primer course. So this is an online course. It's in bite-sized chunks, and it's there just to get you going. You get a CPD certificate at the end of it, and it's been a 5-star rated by hundreds of people. Okay, so the next part then is talking about relevance and the impact of AI on business, and this is the second step. So we've spoken to hundreds of businesses in the last 18 months or so and have done a lot of projects. So we think that we're pretty well placed to comment on what we see working and what's not. So we're seeing 3 basic approaches to adopting AI. And as we're talking to Devonians today, I thought we'd use a nautical metaphor. So we call these the ocean liner, the fishing boat, and the speedboat. The speedboats are those businesses that get it. They're motoring along quickly, and they either have a more visionary board or a few key senior employees who see the opportunity, or they devote some resource and responsibility to it. And those businesses are seeing rapid growth. The fishing boats are a lot of businesses who are out there having a go, but without a radar. They're interested in AI and they know why it's relevant to them, but they're not making the most out of it. Then there are the other businesses, which we call the ocean liners. These are often larger or more traditional businesses that will just wait and see what happens and then will make a decision. They're often risk averse, they're scared about making the wrong decision, they're bureaucratic, or just too stuck in their ways to change quickly. Unsurprisingly, this is why they're growing the slowest. However, many businesses are just working like individuals and not thinking about how to share the benefits with the rest of the team, and they don't have a strategic plan for how they're going to roll things out and when. A number of businesses we've met have started on pilot projects without bringing their team along because they thought it would be a hassle, and those businesses haven't done so well. So for us, this just goes to show that it's not just a technology problem, it's also a people problem. And so this is why we try to engage with the whole team and get together so we can show them the way to make AI relevant for them and how they can benefit from it. So the next step after gathering all of your use cases for your team is to figure out where the value lies. And to do this, you need to tear them apart a bit. So you need to get a measure of their value in terms of time or growth so you get a reasonable idea of what the end result could be. Next, you have to think through how feasible the use case is. Now, ideally, you're looking for some low-hanging fruit at first, something that's easy to achieve but has high value. But you also have to keep your eyes on the longer term prize, which can be projects which are a little bit more complicated. But obviously, as time passes and technology gets better, these things get easier to do. So you've got to have two things in mind: quick wins and a long-term vision. Another good way of looking at it is to think about where your use cases could align most effectively with your business needs. There's no point just doing something for the sake of it. So this diagram shows a business pipeline. The thin areas are where it's constrained. So the rule is that you can only move as fast as where the most constrained part of your business is. So in the example above, we would look to scale sales first because that's the thinnest part of the pipe, and then client fulfillment afterwards. So this method frees up the biggest obstacles first and allows you to run your business more easily and successfully. But not only do you have to consider the value of the use case, but you also need to factor in the complexity of executing it. So let's take a little bit more of a look at some AI use cases now. So we've got a table here. We've broken them down into categories. We're going to drill down in a few certain areas. So these are the sorts of use cases that are not too complicated to implement and that have a higher value. So for example, using to help personalize sales messages tends to result in much higher conversions, especially when you combine that with automation. It leads to significantly better results. Setting up a chatbot is obviously another quick win, really easy to do now, and you can decide on the level of complexity that you need. And the result is happier customers. In marketing, you're all probably aware of tools like ChatGPT, obviously from the poll results. So you can write content, but it can work much more effectively when you train it on your information. And you can produce all sorts of content from plain text to PDF, videos, carousels, all sorts of things. The trick there is actually using a content engine and combining that with a social media manager to help schedule stuff for you. AI is also great at scenario testing marketing campaigns against your ideal customer profiles and segmenting customers from your data. So in this way, you can create much more successful messages and speak more directly to your customers to drive sales. AI also works really well in project management tasks as well. So for example, to help with creating a project plan and when that plan's live, being able to query who's doing what and when, and to help with task allocation and even sending smart notifications. So those are some really useful areas where AI can be deployed. The number of use cases is actually potentially endless. It's just a question of whether a problem is worthwhile solving. So now you've got some potential ideas about use cases. Let's take a look at a few real world examples. So the first one is sales outreach. The problem, I think, for a lot of small businesses is you often lack the time to reach out to people. So if you've got something to do that for you, it can open the door and take a lot of pressure off you. So this example is one where you're going to get the objective of having a flow of warm leads coming together. This is particularly powerful if you combine it with something like LinkedIn. So the basic process is that you are going to look for some potential leads. So you're going to have some criteria about who your ideal customers are. You can then get that data. There's various platforms which provide you with that data. Then what you need to do is to cleanse it. Okay, so that means making sure there's no missing information, making sure the emails work and stuff like that. And then the clever part comes in doing the AI personalization of the messages. So you can scrape information from services like LinkedIn or Apollo, and then you can send message sequences in volume, and you can integrate that with other workflows like adding those leads to your CRM and stuff like that. So it's obviously really useful to implement a system like that, because it means you've got a flow of warm leads kind of kicking in all the time. But if any of you have ever been involved with sales, you know that this isn't a replacement for a complete strategy. Very quickly, what you'll notice is that, yes, you'll get some leads in, but there'll be other people who aren't quite ready. So then you kind of need to combine that with marketing. So that's kind of a good example of how a business constraint might work. You've got to be able to feed the engine. So it's no good if you just got sales. You're actually going to have to start communicating with people, nurturing them, and gradually educating them about what you do and so forth. Okay, so that's one example. Another example is one of my first clients, actually, Mike. So he's from Plymouth and he has a quantity surveying business. So one of the first projects I did for him was automating a complex cost report with the output that was coming from a professional bit of QS software. And that ended up saving him a working week per month. I'm currently actually working on a project with him, which is helping him doing contract review. So this is using a bespoke model, which is trained on NEC3 contracts, which are a type of contract which are used in construction, contract law and regulations. And the purpose of this is actually to help him assist with cost disputes that he has to adjudicate on with different contractors and the people he's working for and so on and so forth. So that gives you a bit of a sense of what can be done. But this sort of stuff is not, off the shelf. So that, it's kind of using open source software that's kind of custom built. And next of a case study is one that Mike actually did. So this was about improving customer experience. So the idea was to create a database that could help the business. So heat pumps were having a few problems. So what they did was they scraped a lot of public source data, video, stuff from forums, interviewing installers, manuals of these different heat pumps, and they used that to create a body of knowledge which they could then have provide to people on the website, which they could then provide solutions to as well. So again, not particularly complicated, but a good impact. Another example was from a business called Unsplash, which they were looking to, again, to improve the customer experience and ultimately deal with customer support in a better way. So what they did was they analyzed 1,200 support tickets. They analyzed the key issues inside those and the resolutions. And what they did then was they're able to pull out the FAQs and create a troubleshooting guide, create standard customer emails for the key issues, all aligned with their with their brand voice and alignment with that. So again, not too complicated, but an important win for them. So what we do is we help businesses to get those use cases together. And again, we can do that with just a single workshop. So what we tend to do then is we've taken interviews with people, and we often get about 20 to 40 use cases from speaking to people. So when we sit down with them, we then get them to pick them apart. So on the screen there, what you see is a template which we use to help them do that. So what we're looking for then is to assess what the value is and the complexity ultimately, so we can whittle them down and get it into a roadmap that will work. Mike, do you want to say anything about that quickly?
Yeah, sorry. So over the last couple of years, we've actually got a library of about 1,000 different use cases come from different SMEs and the work that we've worked on them with through all the interactions that we've had. And in there, we're definitely starting to see some common use cases, and they're probably not as obvious things such as like knowledge understanding, competitor analysis, things like that, which actually would normally be beyond the scope of a typical SME because they're just too busy. And that's quite interesting how they come out. In terms of pulling them together, there's a very standardized process, but it all comes down to that value and complexity associated with them. But that's leading us to a place now where we've got some pretty good ideas around kind of, let's call them golden use cases for businesses, which are starting to emerge, which are a lot more advanced than the sort of original marketing, like automation pieces that we were seeing a year ago.
Great. Um, so what you'll find is that once you've actually spent some time thinking about things a bit more deeply, um, you'll end up sifting the wheat from the chaff. So you might have got some things which you thought might have been good ideas, and they end up slipping down the list. But what you end up then is with the gold. Okay, but we help you get to that place. So but we don't do it alone. I think the important point is, you are the ones who know your businesses well. And it's that process of sort of team interaction and discussion that's actually really valuable in kind of getting to that place. So we just help facilitate that. Another clever idea which Mike came up with is that often businesses struggle with the blank page problem. They just don't know what's possible. So we created this deck of cards with the use cases on there, just to sort of help share them around. And it's a good way of actually sort of just starting conversation about what might work for your business. And these are available from the website if you want to get involved. It's just a bit of fun. The next part on the journey is the framework. So you've got a good sense now of why it's important, how it can be applicable to your business, and you've got a roadmap in terms of what to do. The next piece is you actually need to begin to deliver it. So when you come to think about that, then there's all sorts of organizational elements that go into that. And this is much more important if you've got a business that's got just more than a couple of people in it. Anything more than that, then you have to think about it. For example, you might need policies around how your employees use AI. You need to make sure that they're doing stuff ethically. They need to make sure that they're not putting sensitive data in there. Those are just a couple of basic examples. So you also need to be thinking about how to, upskill your employees. So there's exercises and guides, whether you need to sort of buy tools in or whether you need to build them or some combination of the two. And if you want to think longer term, then you also have to think about your data and to get a handle on that, where it is, to make sure it's in the right format, it can be read and digested by AI. So we provide all of these things and more in the AI adoption framework. So this is a compendium of information and online resource that we offer that's aimed at both leaders and employees. So we know that understanding these more organizational elements as well as other things we talked about today are really important, but as busy consultants, we just can't get to sort of see everybody. So we spent probably 6 months or so working on this as a sort of lower cost self-serve online resource to help you get AI ready. And we complement that with live check-ins. For those businesses that want a bit more help to stay on track, then we also offer in-person consulting to make sure that happens. So we think this is the most practical thing we can offer businesses that really want to get stuck into AI. And it saves a lot of time. So the fourth step then is the build and implement phase. So this is where I spend quite a lot of time. So if you're ready to build, then Appy Automations can design and deliver the solutions for you. On the screen is an example of what a simple agentic system might look like. So this design is currently the best method of accessing up-to-date knowledge on any subject. One of the problems with systems like OpenAI is they're not trained on current knowledge. There's a cutoff point. So a system like this can address that. Privacy can also be another concern. So you might want to be able to access your company knowledge or important information about a particular subject. So you load in your data source, and this gets converted into a format that the AI can understand, and then the agent is able to query it. and add some context to the information. And you can have a variety of different interfaces. You could use an app like Slack or Telegram or your own website. So we create tailored solutions to meet your needs, and we make sure that we do this as cost effectively as possible. So quite happy to recommend paid and plug-in tools. And we don't build everything from scratch each time. Sometimes, it's about upskilling your employees and using tools, and other times it's about building things. So what we do is we try to do that in the most cost efficient way as possible by listening to you. So as you've seen, using these new AI tools has got a lot of advantages, but this gets amplified if you have finely tuned tools and you combine that with automation to help you scale the benefits. So once we've built the tools for you, we can also provide that with ongoing maintenance, should you wish. So we think that's a good idea because we can make sure that you've got the latest models and your systems get updated and improved with your feedback. So we can do simple stuff and kind of complicated cutting edge stuff. The final piece on the journey is about continuous learning. I'm afraid it never ends in AI, but it's really important that you kind of keep on top of this. So as a reminder, continuous learning is just all about ensuring the long-term success of your AI journey. AI is evolving really rapidly. So to remain competitive, you obviously just have to kind of embed that culture of adaptability and exploration. So stay up to date on the latest trends, risks, and opportunity, and this is going to help your team stay agile and prepared for future challenges. You can do this via online resources or via a community, and there you might also find support from experts and possibly also a delivery ecosystem. So let's just wrap up with a quick recap of what those steps are. So before you start your journey with your business, it's essential to get a strong foundational understanding of AI across your organization, what it is, what it does, the risks, the opportunity, and to build a common language. It doesn't take that long, but the benefit is you get everyone on board. Once you've done the first bit, then you need to know why it's relevant to you. How can AI address your company's specific challenges? So you need to explore practical use cases with your team and connect AI to real world problems and opportunities. And with an understanding of the relevance, the next step is to develop a framework for adoption. So that's a structured approach that helps your businesses fast track success while avoiding unnecessary complexity or risks. And the build phase is where strategy turns into action. So this is where your organization focuses on developing and deploying AI-driven solutions that deliver measurable outcomes, whether through improved operations, more meetings, enhanced products, or new revenue streams. And the final part then is continuous learning. This is all about long-term success. If you want to know a little bit more about us and what we do, we also offer a community as well to help with that sort of the continuous learning part. So if you want to stay in touch and learn from each other, then just use the form on the screen there, which is on via menti.com. So I think that pretty much concludes the presentation. So I think we're pretty much ready to take some questions from the audience if they are ready.
Hi, Ross. I think we've got a number of questions in the chat. So I don't know if you want me to read the chat and read them out to you, or
sure. Let's do what we can.
Okay, so I think we had one in the first instance is a quite straightforward one from Pen. Pen wants to know where she can get hold of the 3-hour training. So if you or Mike could pop that in the chat, that would be great.
No problem.
Nina, did you want to ask your question?
So there was a term used which I didn't quite understand on one of the slides, which was agentic systems. And I thought, I don't understand what that is. And I couldn't keep up with you when you were trying to explain what that was.
No problem. So yeah, what it means is you're using an AI agent or more than one AI agent to deliver a solution for you. So if you remember, an AI agent is something which has not only a body of knowledge, but can also take actions. So let's take a simple example. It might be that you could speak to your AI and say, right, book me a holiday. And what it would know is you could then talk to it about what it, what the things that you might be looking for. I want to go to Greece. I want it to be under £500 and it wants to be in this area. It would go and look for all those things for you and would then be able to go to the website, enter that information and do it for you if you'd already given it the authority to do that. So that would be an example of agentic behavior. It has agency to do something on your behalf.
Lovely. Thank you. Get it now. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Nina. Naomi asked for, Naomi, did you want to ask your question?
Hi, yeah, thank you. I just wanted to know what the difference between free tools and open source tools are, please. I know that came up on the poll, but I thought they were one and the same.
Well, they can be sometimes. Generally, free tools are normally, let's say that you have an app and it gives you a free trial. Normally most apps kind of have like a free level and then a paid level if you go over a certain point. But normally the quid pro quo is if you're having a free tool, then normally you're putting your data in there and then they're going to be using that then to train their models. So in a business context, you need to be thinking about the sensitivity of the information that you're putting in. An open source tool is often something which developers will be using. So it can be, let's say, a model which is developed by a completely separate team. It's not commercial. You don't pay for it. And all you're doing is you just download that and you're able to use that privately without any cost. So in that case, then your data is private and you're not having to pay for using that particular service.
Thank you. Then we had a question from Mark Field from Fresh Digital Media. Mark, did you want to ask your question? If Mark doesn't come off, I will ask the question for him. Okay, so Mark asked, what plugin tools, etc., would you recommend for building AIs? Is Google Vertex a good platform, and what do you guys use?
There are all sorts of different platforms, I think, out there. And for us, I guess there's not one single right answer. So I can tell you the sorts of platforms that I would use. So I tend to work between simple platforms like make.com. Sometimes I use N8N, which is another automation platform. And then I'll be using Python as well. And inside Python, there'll be other libraries that you'll use with things like Pydantic and stuff to manage agents. Though obviously within that, there's all sorts of different things that you can do. And there are so many different platforms around these days. So I think it's just a question of using the ones which are best suited to the job that's in hand.
Thank you. Ben Brill, did you want to ask your question?
Yeah, thank you. It was a pretty straightforward question, really. It's just with regards to what you mentioned about AI not always being trained and up to date.
Yeah.
So in terms of things like ChatGPT, if you're asking it for information about maybe legal requirements and it's not trained up to date, does that mean then it wouldn't capture what the laws changed recently? So that information may be out of date?
Could be. If normally I would say at the moment they tend to be about sort of 3 months or so behind. It could be like with ChatGPT, it might be October when it was last trained, for example. So if you've got some new development that's happened in, like last week, it's not going to know that.
Yeah.
Which is why then you would use a different sort of model. So, and again, I think if you're dealing with things which are around regulation and law, you've got to be quite careful about the model that you use. So this might be a slight detour in terms of a technical discussion, but LLMs or things like ChatGPT can hallucinate. They can tell you the wrong answer without knowing about it. So if you're dealing with technical information, you have to use a different sort of model where it won't hallucinate. Okay, so this type of model is called retrieval augmented generation, or RAG. So that's where you can give it up-to-date information with whatever the law change is. Let's say in this example, so it has bang up-to-date information, and then an AI is able to access that, and it's not going to hallucinate with what's going on. So if you've got kind of important information like that and you need something up to date, you kind of have to adopt one of these other approaches. The best off-the-shelf tool for doing something like that is Notebook LM, which Google provides for free. But again, I would say if you're doing something on a commercial basis, it's best to develop your own thing. It's not particularly difficult these days, but generally these things aren't publicly available or paid for tools around at the moment.
All right. Yeah, thank you for that.
Okay.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Thank you, Ben. So we've got a question from Dom Cooper from View Digital. Dom, did you want to ask your question?
Yeah, thanks, Claire. I think possibly Ross might have covered it a little bit in his last comment. Thanks both for your time today. It's been really interesting. I saw a funny example of somebody who'd had a chat with an AI chatbot and managed to convince a major car company to buy a car for $1 with no takesy backsies or something funny like that. And so obviously using AI, there's lots of potential for mistakes. Are there any tips that you've got in order to mitigate those errors? You mentioned the RAG, which probably gives you a more accurate data set. Is there anything if somebody's using, those open source or free tools, perhaps?
Yeah, so when it comes to actually dealing with chatbots, I think in the early days when people were just sort of throwing ChatGPT at things, that's where the problem lies. But as you say, the two basic approaches are either to use one of those retrieval augmented generation systems, like I said, or there are other sort of chatbot providers which allow you to put guardrails on. So it's a bit like having a branch of questions. So you're probably familiar with the old style of chatbots, which generally people get quite grumpy with and not very good to use, where you feel like it's not answering a question. But there's like there's clearly like a halfway house between, allowing AI to make decisions in terms of where it can take you. But if you still want to have a better structure that ultimately you need to lead people to this particular area, then you can sort of put those guardrails on. So there are bits of software that you can use like that, but those basically are the two solutions these days. No one is using just a general LLM because it can just make stuff up like that, it's just not the right tool for that particular job.
Could I jump in here, Ross? Sorry.
Sure.
Yeah, so one of the things, and this goes back to the education piece, is that when we started very early, people assumed because of what they saw coming out of LLMs as being pretty accurate and truthful, that they were right more often than they were wrong. Part of the education is helping people, and one of the things that we use is to explain to people that everything that comes out of one of these LLMs is in effect a hallucination. Everything has the potential to be wrong. It's just sometimes they happen to be right. And they happen to be right more often than not. And once people understand that concept, then how they apply these tools they take a step back, and they're more controlled and put human in the loop a lot more with how they, if you like, utilize the tools. There's a load of new risks that are coming for businesses around this, where you build automation into your pipelines and people can game it. So they can game the responses that they get out. And that's one example you just used. So for me, fundamentally, there's lots of tools that can help with this, but a lot of it is about education. So the people who are commissioning, buying, building these tools know what's actually going on and why it's producing that outcome.
Thank you, gentlemen. I don't see any more questions in the chat, and the notifications just flashed up that we've got 5 minutes left. Just very quickly, if anyone wants to put their hand up if they've got a last question. Otherwise, what we will do afterwards is send you the post-event information. Ross, are we able to share these slides in that? Are you able to send them to us?
I will do my best. I'll have to figure out a way of how to get them off. Menti doesn't offer that via. I'll figure out a way if people are interested.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. I found it really helpful. There is a mass of information, as you have described, out there. And a number of us, including in the chamber, trying to work out how to start our own journey on this. So understanding the 5 steps I found extremely helpful as to where to start, as opposed to sort of being blinded by jargon. So thank you for that. And think, like Penn, I'll probably be starting with a 3-hour course. And we'll make sure everyone knows how to get in touch with you. Presentation is being recorded, so we will share that on our website. So if you want to watch it again and fast forward to any bits that you missed last time or you weren't sure about, then you will be able to do that. Thank you so much, Ross and Mike. That was really fantastic, as you've seen from the comments, and greatly appreciate you running that for us.
No problem. Thanks for hosting us.
Thanks, gents.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.